Have you watched the show Succession? It's about the family patriarch and the kids trying to figure out who's going to get the succession of this business and all the backstabbing and the conflicts and the dysfunctions and everybody says you need to watch it. It's a great show. And I watched the first episode and I didn't get through the first episode because I have no reason to watch this. I live it.
This is my life.
This is not entertainment to me. This does not relax me.
Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schultz. Rob is the founder and president of Schultz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Schultz Wealth Limited. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. I am your host, Rob Schultz. And here this week, I have my good friend and attorney, Pete Benenati. Pete, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. On a Monday, we were talking, this almost got rescheduled because we both have stuff blowing up all over the place today, don't we?
We do. Deals are hard, and everybody gets ticked off at some point in a deal.
Yeah. So where's your anxiety level right now coming into this?
I was up at 4 a.m. trying to work that deal.
Gosh.
Okay, so that's the way deals work. You got to be committed to it, and I was working it all weekend, and that's how deals work.
Yeah.
And we closed one this morning that the week before we had something come up, and I was on the phone for 3.5 hours on a Saturday trying to figure out a solution to the problem, which we did, and the deal got closed, and everybody's happy this morning, and we were on the release of signatures call at 7 a.m. this morning.
Nice.
So
okay. Well, my anxiety level got up a little bit this morning too. Went and hit some golf balls at lunch. I feel a lot better, and I'm really excited to have you.
Thanks.
I'm going to go ahead and go through your bio that I have. I thought this was put together real well. A lot of times I don't read it, but this time I am. Pete, you've been serving clients in Texas and throughout the United States for over 30 years. You're licensed in the state of Texas, Arkansas, New York, and Nevada, and Colorado.
Not in the Colorado yet. Planning to be. That's it. That's in process.
Okay. Board certified in estate planning and probate law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. That's a big deal. You earned your BA from Queens College in New York, which is where you got your accent.
Not that bad. You should talk to my parents sometime.
And I'm sure when you go back, they're like, you sound like a Texan now, right?
I remember they said I had an accent. I said, what accent? Are you kidding me?
You got your JD from Syracuse University. You earned your LLM degree in taxation from New York University, and then headed west, young man. Pete's firm is located in Bedford, Texas, not far from here. You focus primarily on business, tax, and estate planning, including the negotiation of business sales and executive compensation. Business clients range in size from small, closely held family ventures to multi-million-dollar corporations, some of which people have probably heard of. From restaurants to the oil fields, from entity formation to buy-sell agreements. Your goal is to provide the best legal service available by building lasting relationships and developing an understanding of your needs through quality representation in all areas of your business and family life. Outstanding. First thing that hits me so we've worked together on some stuff. I think forever ago, you represented one of my clients on a transaction. I was impressed, by just the work you did. I've referred you since then to a couple. One was really fun because it was somebody I think who had sold their business, and then the person who bought it defaulted.
Mm-hmm.
That was tough. And then you've done some estate work for clients for us. You're kind of broad compared to some of the attorneys that we work with regard to kind of what you do. You're doing the estate type work. Fortunately, which also includes buy-sell, which is super important, doing transactions, doing business consultation, all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. How do you keep, it's got to drive you crazy. Or how do you do all that?
Actually, it's kind of fun for me. One, I love what I do. And so what it comes down to is if I get an estate planning client and they have a closely held business. And I never seek to get their business work if they have another attorney, but inevitably I have to talk to them about their business and doing a good estate plan. So the client we closed the deal on this morning at 7 a.m. started out as an estate planning client in 2019. And we talked about him selling his business, and I looked at his financials, looked at his numbers, and told him what I thought his company was worth. Took him a few years as he was thinking about it, but a strategic buyer he knew, he reached out to them. We negotiated a deal, negotiated the LOI, and we closed that deal in under 60 days, which in a transaction world is unheard of. That's due diligence, that's LOI, that's agreements, employment agreements, escrow agreements, all of it, plus the tax strategy to make sure we got the best tax treatment. So that's how that one leads. Then on others, I do the business planning because they come to me through one way, shape, or form. And then inevitably, as part of that, they now have cash. All of a sudden, they think they're wealthy. They were always wealthy. They just never think about their business making them wealthy because it's not cash.
Right. It's not liquid.
It's not liquid, but they're wealthy. And all of a sudden now they have this cash, and now they think I have to do some estate planning. They always had to do estate planning. It was probably more important in some ways because they had a closely held business. How are you going to manage that business? How are you going to transition that business? Who's going to operate that business?
How are you going to pay taxes?
How are you going to pay the estate tax? Things of that nature. So you do a lot of that planning. So one leads into the other, and to me, a good estate planning attorney needs to know the business transactions. Even if you're not going to do an M&A, mergers and acquisitions, you need to know the business world because you're dealing with closely held businesses. You're forming structures of voting, non-voting stock, transferring non-voting interests to the next generation and trust, but you never want your senior generation to lose control.
I would think that because, like, for instance, this transaction you just did closed in 60 days, a lot of that probably is because you already knew your client from doing the work for him in 2019.
You want to know something? You'd like to think so. It was all about everybody on the team, the buyers, us, and my seller working hard. And in particular, in this situation, my seller. He was committed, he was dedicated, he was on every request and provided the information incredibly timely. I asked a question, I would get it in response immediately.
That's nice. That's really nice.
And now the deal that I'm trying to close, that should close hopefully tomorrow, Wednesday, has been going on probably since September. Okay, that one's been a lot longer. It's a lot more intense. There's a lot more hiccups along the way, but it will get closed. But in that deal, we had some due diligence questions. We didn't have some clear documentation for some of the history of the company, and that just requires a whole bunch of work. And so trying to get the right tax treatment, we had to do a reorganization of the company before the sale. So there's a lot that goes into it. Every deal is different. 90% of every deal is a lot the same, but that 10% is what makes the difference. So if you're selling an entity that has an FAA license, flight instructor company, you need to sell the company no matter what, because that's the only way the FAA license can move. But most buyers want to buy assets.
Right. And why is that?
Their theory is they don't want the liability of the prior company.
Right.
That's their theory. Okay, which has some truth to it. But the reality is the reason they want to buy assets is they want the tax deduction.
Right.
If they buy the entity, they can't get the step up in basis in the assets to start depreciating them. They can't get the goodwill depreciated over 15 years. So they also want the IRS to help underwrite their purchase price. That's why they want an asset sale. And so many times you have and we can do it. But if you have a C corporation, an entity taxed as a C corporation, an asset sale results in probably a 55% effective tax rate. That is not going to make people want to sell. So if you have a C corp, there's a lot more involved in trying to get that entity sold as opposed to an S corp, which is a flow-through tax entity, or a partnership tax treatment. Not necessarily a partnership itself, but an entity taxed as a partnership. Those both have flow-through treatment, so doing asset sales are far easier for those kind of entities than one that's taxed as a C corporation.
Yeah, and taxes are a huge part of the transaction for both the buyer and the seller.
Absolutely. And for us on the seller side, if we're selling assets, we want as much as possible allocated to goodwill because that's a capital gain asset.
Mm-hmm.
Buyers, if you want, is probably more allocated to what's known as FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, because they get to depreciate that faster. Goodwill is depreciated over 15 years. A lot of equipment can be depreciated in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want allocations to FF&E because that's an ordinary income tax treatment known as depreciation recapture. Real estate has depreciation recapture, but that's a 25% rate. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment have ordinary income effective rates, depreciation recapture. So clients really don't like paying, if you represent the seller, ordinary income tax rates.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so the world of M&A, 90% is the same every time. That 10% is what's going to get you. It's always going to be something out of left field.
Pretty much.
Something a little bit different. And sometimes maybe you don't even know about it till a little later down in the transaction, I would suspect.
On the one that we're trying to close this week, I found out about it last week.
Yeah. A lot of stress in some of those for sure.
It adds a variety to life. I mean, if you didn't like it, if everything was the same and everything was simple, everybody would get bored. The whole point is you got to stay active, you got to stay involved, and it helps you keep your toes. You don't want to ever let your guard down on a deal.
Now, you do like you said, the estate planning. You do some buy sell work, which I consider kind of part of estate planning.
Transition, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you also have it in unrelated parties. Okay, everybody.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so everybody thinks buy-sell agreements about the family, right? And I want that there. But if you and I go into a business together, okay, and we're both supposed to be working in the business, then a buy-sell agreement needs to think about certain situations. One, if I die, odds are you don't want to be in business with my spouse or my kids. So that triggers a right of you to buy my interest. If I become disabled and we're both working in the business, most people hate the idea of working for somebody else to still benefit. It causes tension. So that triggers a right to buy. If all of a sudden I decide I don't want to work anymore, again, you working hard in the business to keep growing the business and grow the value. Yeah, you could get paid, but then the value is still going up and the profits you have to share with me. Most people don't like that. So you have to plan for those situations because that tension is what kills businesses. Okay.
So what you're saying is, the buy-sell should take into account and into careful consideration a parting of the ways between two people just decide to agree to disagree and go their own way, and the agreement itself will help make that happen without lawsuits. And
it spells the rules.
Yeah.
And so most people get frustrated because us lawyers always make things hard in their mind. If everybody did what they were supposed to do, there'd be a lot less lawyers in the world. The document only matters, and I tell this to everybody, if everybody doesn't play nice. If everybody plays nice, the document is irrelevant. You and I could decide to negotiate what we want, even regardless of what the document says. But if that document, and I had this happen just recently, employee no longer with the company, 10% owner, triggers the right to buy out. And so we had the rules in the agreement, but we didn't want to trigger those rules. So we entered into negotiations to go against those rules, not adversarial, working together, because we didn't have to. I represented the majority owner. We didn't have to trigger the buyout, and we knew that. And the other side probably didn't want to remain an owner because there were restrictions on what that person could do if they were still an owner. So we entered into negotiations with their lawyer, our lawyer, and we reached terms on a buyout that was different than the terms of the agreement. But we knew we always had the agreement there, and we actually extended the period to exercise the option under the agreement twice as we were negotiating these terms. So you could always do something different than what the buy-sell agreement says. And even in estate planning, we provide options to buy certain interests in the companies or real estate. But if they want to decide, if all the kids want to agree something different, we could enter into an agreement to do otherwise, even in estate planning.
That's a great point. Really good point. Having options available to you at these different demarcation points that can occur makes a lot of sense.
You made me think of something. Is everybody always thinks that the family house, the lake house, the ski house, the kids love it. They don't want the parents to sell it, and the parents want to keep it because the kids love it. And I always tell them that's a mistake, and it's a mistake because everybody loves it so long as mom and dad are paying for it or parents are paying for it. But when they're gone, all of a sudden the kids have to pay for it. Then you're getting into, why do I have to pay 1/3? I didn't even use it this year. Doesn't matter. You own 1/3. So what we suggest a lot in those situations is creating a trust for that. I have one that's a very expensive ski house, and it's probably worth about 10 million. And we seeded, that one's funded with 5 million to last 10 years. For 10 years, we have a schedule, who gets to use, how it's used, what bedrooms, very detailed. At the end of 10 years, then it triggers the option for any one of the kids to buy the house.
I like that because it takes into account the carry, on some of these assets that potentially will become yours if your parents die, for instance.
It also lets the
Yeah.
kids still play nice together
Yeah.
because now you've taken the equation and the argument about money out of it.
It'd also be good that thing that I thought of while you were talking was that, a little bit of communication about, I mean, do y'all like this lake house or this ski resort spot? I mean, is this something who likes it, who doesn't? Just more communication along those lines. Although it's kind of morbid sometimes, and nobody really. It's not something that you just volunteer to bring up during Christmas, but those family meetings, as we like to call them, where you talk about all this stuff and get everybody's opinion, does make a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And no two estate plans are alike. There's always a little difference. Everybody always thinks about pushing the button. If I could just push a button, it'd be awesome. But these plans are never push a button.
No, they're not.
And so everybody's a little different. Everybody has different dysfunctions. And I get clients who go, Pete, we're strange. And I have to tell them all the time. I had one recently I had to call. I wish I could tell you you're unique.
Yeah.
Okay, but you're not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I've heard the problems before, or the kids who are now all of a sudden not communicating because of who they married or conflicts. And I've had 2 of those calls this past week in families where things have gone sideways and trying to deal with it. So estate planning is a key issue. Vast majority of estate plans are easy, but when you got a family business, succession planning is important. It's unbelievably important. So a lot of times you have a family business, you have the real estate that's involved in the business, and people want to somehow or another treat all their kids equally. Well, that's fine. I'm not saying to treat them differently in value, but if this woman is running the business and this son isn't, having the son and daughter own the business 50-50 is a formula for disaster.
Absolutely.
Because he only cares about getting money out of the business. She's trying to reinvest money into the business and grow the business. It's a conflict. So what we suggest is daughter in this situation gets this. Then the parents say, well, then son should get the business real estate. I said, still a problem.
Still a problem.
His
because
incentive is the
landlord-
highest rent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hers is the lowest rent. So if we do that because we don't have enough other assets, what we do is we put a long-term lease in place. So we'll do a 10-year lease with 5-year options. So now it's 25 years, and we spell out what the rent is, triple net, the obligations of the tenant, which tend to be the parents at first, and then we know we have a long-term lease in place.
That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah.
It avoids the conflict. The rules are set out. If we have enough, we provide that her share is funded first with the business, and she has the right to buy the real estate. So then she has to go out and get a bank loan, but she's backed by the real estate, and the brother now gets cash or other assets. So there are different ways to deal with it, because the theory is that a family business doesn't survive to the 3rd generation.
Very rarely, like a very, very small percentage.
And it is. But that 3rd generation is because you have so many grandkids now trying to own the business that you have too many chiefs, so to speak. And you can't have that in a business. Somebody has to be in charge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, always. Yeah, there needs to be somebody who is going to take the lead going forward. I would say that gets into something we've talked about before on this show is, as far as your heirs, for instance, are concerned, a little bit of kid training, as I like to call it, where, we're identifying some of the skills and talents that are going to be needed to be able to, for instance, take over a business or take over a large family office or whatever it may be, and identifying those skills and talents, cultivating those skills and talents, identifying who has which talents, and trying to get everybody kind of set up and lined up where they're going to be in the right place with the right tools to be able to succeed.
But that's still just dependent upon the senior generation willing to share.
This is true. And yeah.
Have you watched the show Succession?
No, I haven't.
Neither have I, thankfully. I watched one episode. I couldn't get through
What
the
is
first.
it on Netflix? I don't even.
It's on, I think, Stars. And it's its final season. It's a big hit. People love it. And it's about the family patriarch and the kids trying to figure out who's going to get the succession of this business, and all the backstabbing and the conflicts and the dysfunctions and everything else, including the father in this. I've read about it. And everybody says you need to watch it. It's a great show. And I watched the first episode, and I didn't get through the first episode because I have no reason to watch this. I live it.
This is my life.
This is not entertainment to me. This does not relax me.
I need to be able to come home away from this.
But the concept is you go through that, and that is all about the business succession planning. And for that to work, it has to be the senior generation willing to share. So years ago, a client gave me a New Yorker cartoon that I thought was great. And the father has his arm around the son. They're looking down at the factory. And he says to his son, "One day, son, this will all be yours as soon as my father gives it to me."
Well, so personal story, I don't think you know this, but, my family was in the newspaper business. Second generation, down in Central Texas. We had a chain of newspapers, small weeklies and one or two dailies. And my grandfather was the majority owner. And my dad owned a minority stake in the business. And at age 49, my dad died suddenly, just like that. It was horrible. Because now my mom, there were no agreements. I mean, there was nothing. And so I put my mom in the position as a minority owner. Grandfather, goes through a massive amount of I guess you'd say, emotion. He kind of goes a little bit crazy. I mean, he was older, very old at the time, couldn't run it himself, and turned into a huge problem because obviously my mom wasn't able to just step in there into my dad's shoes and draw an income. That became an issue. There was nobody there to run it. Turned into a fire sale. It was an absolute disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't have to be that way.
Mm-mm.
Very simple buy-sell type agreement to back up some negotiations between my mom and my granddad, and maybe even some funding, some life insurance on a 49-year-old's not.
49-year-old on dad, it would have been expensive, but on the 49-year-old, nobody expects it though. Who expects their son? Who expects their child to die before you? No parent wants to lose their child.
No, absolutely. But you were talking about earlier about how everybody hates the lawyer because of all the details and all that kind of stuff. But that's, in my mind, that's where those agreements and where having an attorney really comes into play. It's the what ifs when they get down to things that are very unlikely to happen, but if they do happen, they're catastrophic. Those are the ones that obviously you want to insure with life insurance, for instance, on my dad, but then also, have some really simple agreements in place as to what should happen.
Including the payment terms, whether it's 10% down, the rest paid out of 10 years. That way the terms are all spelled out, so you're not hitting the business with a cash flow problem.
No question.
Or debt from a third-party bank, depending on when the loan is needed from a third-party bank. The thing is when you need money from a bank, that's the least time they sometimes want to give it to you.
Absolutely.
Nothing against the banking, but if the business is in trouble, it's hard to get loans. Or if they lost one of the key employees, bankers get a little bit more nervous about making
Well,
that
they
loan.
should. Yeah, absolutely.
So
No, all these things, can easily be dealt with to a certain degree within a buy-sell agreement. No question about it.
absolutely, without a doubt. We actually done a couple of different estate plans where the parents didn't sell the business yet, but as a condition of the kids getting the business when the survivor of the parents dies, we have as an exhibit to the estate plan a buy-sell agreement. And as a condition, they have to sign that buy-sell agreement. If they don't get the interest in the business.
I like that. Yeah.
So
All kinds of cool stuff you can do, to just assuage people's fears. Question. So, Pete, talking about business transition, buy, sell, all that kind of stuff. I know in recent years, you've really built up your business. You have, I don't know, last time I was over there were lawyers and people running around all over the place. Kind of tell us about your plan. I mean, kind of what do you think for folks like you and me that are provide advice and documents and things like that? How are you thinking about your transition, and how do you think folks like us should?
I'm going to have to be careful on this because my wife might listen to it.
I'm going to make sure she does.
The statement is nobody ever thinks I'll retire. Okay.
Yeah.
At some point I probably will, but I'm going to be doing this.
I get that all the time. My kids, I've heard it 3 or 4 times from my family, probably in the last month. Oh, Dad, you'll never retire.
And I don't have an interest. I've recently said this to somebody else. If it's no longer fun, that's when I will retire. The nice thing about a lawyer or an advisor like you is we don't lose our skills like a baseball player or a football player or a basketball player. Age is an enemy of anybody who has to use those kind of skills, right? And so if you don't lose that, we have our mind and our mind's good and we're still enjoying what we're doing. I have no interest in quitting, but it's funny when I started all of a sudden getting into my 50s, I started getting questions from clients. So Pete, what happens if something happens to you? And I had to go, I'm not that old, okay, people? I'm not that old. I'm not going anywhere yet. But I do have attorneys and I do have transitions. And so we have, as a lawyer, I'm required by the state bar. If I didn't have attorneys in my firm, I had to have a plan that what attorney would come in and manage the practice to transition it. Considering that I have other attorneys.
I know that because I watched like the first few editions of Lincoln Lawyers. So.
But I do have other attorneys, and that will keep going. There's insurance in place that something happens to me, that things keep operating and everybody's taken care of, because the key is making sure the clients are taken care of. At some point, will I bring in partners? Maybe. My rule is if I have partners, they're non-equity partners. And the reason is they get paid very well, they are involved, but I don't want other owners. And it's not because of my ego, it's because what I tell all my clients, partnerships are tough. You heard me talk about buy-sell agreements. One leaves, one's not working as hard. Whatever it is, it causes tension. As long as I'm the only person who's the equity owner, I don't have to worry about that. Now, at some point, I may have no choice, but my goal is when I transition out, it'll be a full transition out, and I'll just work for somebody else, whoever buys my practice, or so to speak, one of my attorneys might buy it. That's my plan. And so you just want to make sure you have good people around. You want to have a good transition person. You have people for that same reason. But
absolutely.
But as long as my mind's good, why would I stop doing what I do? It's the closing this morning and the call. My client called me after the call for the release the signatures, and he's talking to me, and he's so happy about the situation and everything we've done. That's an incredible high. Okay, I'm sorry. That's a great feeling, and as long as that feeling still brings a joy to my face, why would I want to give up that feeling?
Yeah, the other thing, so getting up into your 50s, which I totally relate to. I just turned 56. And 2 things there. One is absolutely you're right. It's almost like we get even better and better at kind of what we do when it's advice as we get into our 50s and so forth. And it gets easier. It takes less time, feel a little bit more efficient. So in some respects, I don't know if you're doing this, but I don't work like 60 hours a week or anything like that. Now, granted, there's stuff where I have to be here late on a Friday, or take and deal with stuff. But for the most part, I want to hear your take on this. Do you kind of feel like you have a certain amount of independence in your day and your hours? No.
I work every day.
Okay.
I work every day. On the deal that closed this morning, last Saturday, not this past weekend, the weekend before, I wound up putting in 3.5 hours trying to figure out a solution to a problem. Yesterday, I probably put in 2 hours on a different deal trying to get that done.
Yeah.
And so I'm still going.
Still putting in quite a few hours.
I'm still going full bore, and that's the thing. That if anything, I'm going to do is try to figure out how not to be doing it at that level. But I figure
that's
at
what I
that,
think.
but I figure at that level, I have easily a good 10 years.
Okay. But you're doing some of that maybe from home, or are you doing that all coming into the office?
No, I do it for no, I was in Vegas at our house there for the most of March because we're having a remodel in our building. So I technically don't have an office. I don't have a computer. So if I have to work remotely, I might as well work remotely from our house in Vegas, which is in Summerlin and very comfortable and relaxing and very nice. And it's 2 hours earlier there. So, when I get started early in the morning. So I was still emailing my office before anybody was in their office. Some of them might not even been up yet.
Yeah.
But when they're done at the office, let's say 6 o'clock, it's only 4 o'clock in Las Vegas. So I'm still able to continue on without a blink of an eye past them. So I could work from anywhere, and technology allows me to do that. Phones allow me to do that. I'm on calls all the time wherever I am, whether at my house in Springtown or we have a house in Colorado, and we'll be in Colorado for a couple of weeks at least in August. My wife will be there probably all of August, but she hates the heat. And
So you're not in the office a lot of the time. You're in different locations, kind of where you want to be, or where it sounds like cutting horses or some of your hobbies.
No, not my hobby. Let's make that clear.
Oh,
my
okay.
my wife's business, and we breed, and she breeds, and we have 2 horses now pregnant. We just had another horse born. We have a 1-year-old, and the technology in that industry allowing you to freeze eggs of certain studs, and then impregnate your females, and then use surrogate horses to actually give birth, so your competing horses can still compete, is amazing. But she's the one who knows all that. She's
doing all that. Okay.
Oh yeah, and we have a very good trainer, and he does a phenomenal job. And he's one of the top cutting horse competitors in his field, and she's competed against Taylor Sheridan, and Taylor Sheridan is done wonders for the exposure of the cutting horse industry.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And he has a nice arena out in Weatherford, and been out there for competitions with her. So it's really hers, and we have barns, and we have the arena on the property that gets leased out and things of that nature. So it's a business operation, and she puts a lot of time and effort into it. But to say it's no, she would not be happy if I said it was mine. So,
well, you support her.
I absolutely support her, and I go see her compete when she competes when I can.
Cool. Yeah.
It's fun. And it's you make a lot of good people out there, like the youth. The thing about that, and humor me for a second, the youth that are involved in the cutting horse world is amazing. They are supportive of each other. It's not cutthroat. They're friends. They all want each other to do well. Even in the adult competitions, I call it like golf, I guess is the best way. You're not competing against other people. You're competing against yourself to get the best score. If the other person outscores you because they had a better run, that's okay. Nobody likes losing, but it's not like you're in a basketball court where you're competing against another player and you got to beat them. It's you and the horse, and that cow that's out there.
Very nice. So, along the lines of working from different locations and so forth, because I think we all do that at this point. What are your feelings on this remote work? I mean, we're sitting in an office building right now. This is my office. A lot of this building is vacant. Uh, Interestingly, we just had somebody move in a big way today, but I don't know what's going on there. How do you feel about remote work and like for your people or for in general?
Um, if people need to work remotely because they ask or whatnot, I never really say no. But we don't have a policy that's full time or part time remote work.
Yeah, we don't either. Yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe I'm just too old, but there's a dynamic of everybody being in the office. There's a
Mhm.
dynamic of being able to walk down the hall and just ask a colleague for their professional advice. For me, they call me, but I'm also the old dog now. So most people don't want to ask me. So the senior attorneys will call me and ask questions, and they'll email me and say we need to talk, and I'll call. Yeah, because they know me. I'm old school. I work on emails. That sounds strange considering when I first started practicing, there was no emails. And
Good point.
okay, but everybody likes to text now, and it's like, really? Why are you making me work on my phone with my old fingers? Okay, so it's something we really, the dynamic remote work, especially in the transactional side. I've talked to other transactional lawyers. It makes it harder to do M&A deals when you have somebody over there, and we're all trying to do it on a Zoom. It can we get in a room? But this whole deal that I just did that closed this morning, I didn't see my client once we had the LOI signed. We did everything through phones and emails. I have never seen the attorneys. Everything's been done through phones and emails. That's technology today. As I told my client this morning, in the old days, you'd have to come into a conference room
Absolutely.
and a package and the stack of, there'd be 12 piles of papers that you would have to go through with the sign here stickies and sign them all in wet ink. Now we have one set of documents, DocuSigned, except for the wet ink ones that need to be done. We send signatures over to the other side. They send signatures to us. We get a call in the morning. Do you authorize the release of your signatures? Everything is complete. Yes. And then the other side, do you? Yes. All signatures are released. Wires were initiated. By noon, my client had his money. And that's the new world. And then the old days, I would get binders of all these documents that I would have to keep track of and to keep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But now everything comes in a zip file and we download it into the cloud or upload it into the cloud, and that's it. It's kind of anticlimactic in some ways.
Yeah, it is. It's just, but technology is cool from that standpoint because it's certainly technology allows for the remoteness, allows for you to be in Vegas, be in Colorado, wherever you want to be, and still be efficient. Certainly at a leadership level, at a higher leadership level where, you're not constantly having to be, managing. You've got, tiers that are doing that. But at the same time, I agree with you. I think that just means we have to force ourselves to get face to face, eye to eye from time to time.
We do.
Like this thing, we could do this remotely.
And I was thrilled. And I was thrilled when you said,
no, we're doing this in person.
And I was thrilled. I've
Yeah.
done some of these before, and I'd rather be in the room staring, even if it's on a Zoom. It's just not as good. But for lawyers, okay, and I don't know if you've done the studies, but lawyers have a very high incidence of suicide, depression, and addiction.
I didn't know that.
Very high. And the state bar has made it a policy at every seminar that's more than a day, it has an hour on that issue to try and make sure they deal with mental health for the lawyers. Part of it is a lawyer is never supposed to be wrong. And part of it is a lawyer is always supposed to be available. New technology allows the lawyer to at least travel, go see their kids' games, or go on a vacation, but they still have a laptop, a computer.
You still have to be available.
And a phone. Oh,
Yeah.
always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always available.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same here. Yeah.
Okay. So so you need to be available, but the technology now allows you to have a quote unquote a more balanced life, as balanced as it can be as a lawyer. But you get to see your family. You get to go on vacations. In the old days, getting a lawyer to go on a vacation was like pulling teeth because they were out of pocket.
Yeah, that's funny because I never really unplug either, and actually makes me feel better to know that I'm plugged. like you were talking about getting up really early, and I'll do that even when we're on vacation. Get up really early, work through all that email stuff, and then at some point I can close, my laptop and not initiate anything at least. But I still have my phone.
Now, say you still
You
have
know,
that phone.
but
Anything goes wrong, you actually have access and you know what's going
yeah,
on.
yeah, and I'm fine. I can go have fun that way.
And I think that's good for all business owners too, beyond you and me.
Yeah.
Um, I I represented. He's passed away now. A significant majority owner of a significant restaurant chain, and whenever we went out to dinner, man never turned off. We're at the restaurant, and he's thinking, well, bread. We don't put free bread on the table because you know how much bread costs. He's always looking at. He never turns. We
Well,
never
that's because
turn
it's his
off.
passion, though.
We never
Yeah.
turn off.
That's why. It's just because he's passionate about it. You're passionate about what you do, so you don't want to turn it off.
And every good, successful entrepreneur is that way.
Yeah.
They live their business, but now they at least have the ability to balance because divorces were high in the legal industry too,
Yeah.
because we were never there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so technology is wonderful, but we have to learn to balance it and use it the right way. So
Agreed.
So that to me is where we are. I don't know how much time we have left, but on your business owners who are looking to sell, I want to cover a couple of things, if that's okay.
Shoot, go for it.
All right. So I did a seminar years ago to the Society of CPAs, and I had a paper that I presented, and I still have it. That's basically soup to nuts. They asked me on a transaction. And what I want to talk about is that transaction starts long before you ever get a letter of intent from a potential buyer. It gets to making sure your financials and your books are in good order, making sure your corporate documents are in good order, actually going to see if all the liens you have actually been released from the lenders. You'd be surprised how many liens we have to go try and get released from some equipment leasing company that was paid off 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But it also goes to negotiating with the business broker. Okay. The terms in a business broker agreement, there are terms you could negotiate. One of the key ones we try on our smaller sales especially is anything that's deferred money, the broker gets paid when you get paid. So if there's a promissory note, as you get paid on the promissory note, they get their commission on the promissory note, which means interest. If there's an earnout where there's a bump or success because you reach certain threshold post-closing, they get a percentage of that when you get it. Now, the one thing you can't do it on is reinvestment. So if you're getting equity from the buyer, that you're going to pay commission on.
Yeah.
But anything that's deferred, that promissory note, that earnout, there's no guarantee you're going to get it. And in any sale, the only guarantee you could depend upon is the cash at closing. So if you're not comfortable with the cash at closing, I always tell clients, then don't sell.
Good tips, Pete. Very good.
Okay. So that's real money we're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And so the whole goal is to make sure that you get a good broker that you could work with, negotiate certain key times in broker. The other thing on letters of intent, I get this statement all the time. It's non-binding. Okay, I understand it's non-binding. But if you agree to the terms in the LOI and then you want to all of a sudden think later on you're going to negotiate those same terms that you agreed on in the LOI, letter of intent, unless something's changed, how does that make you look? How can the buyer trust what you're doing? Because you're trying to renegotiate terms. If the buyer was trying to renegotiate terms, lower the price, you'd get ticked off. And now they'll show you why, financials, your EBITDA, we did some due diligence, whatever. But the reality is that LOI, anything that's important, we want to negotiate. So if the employment agreement's important, we're going to negotiate that employment agreement in the LOI. So on one we just recently signed, we made sure to negotiate the severance for my client who's going to be involved in the company. And part of the agreement is an employment agreement, which is important to him. It's part of the consideration. And he wants to make sure that 60 days after close, if they terminate him, fine, but he wants severance. So on a 3-year contract, a lot of times we'll say if you terminate before the first year, you get 1 year severance. If it's after the year, it's 6 months severance. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. But I just did the deal. We got 6 months severance in the letter of intent. That's clearly now in there, so we don't have to worry about it. When does the escrow money, the money that you have to hold back in a sale for unknown, undisclosed liabilities, get released? We have a 2-year one that we just did. Half of it's released in a year, the other half in 2 years. So there are all these different terms that you can negotiate in the LOI to make sure you don't have conflict when it comes down to the purchase agreement. Purchase agreement, you're going to still have issues, but if you get those front end issues taken care of, everybody's on the same team and everybody understands.
That's good. So get representation on your LOI then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I had one a few years ago. Pete, I don't want to sign this non-compete agreement. You do know you agreed to this non-compete term in the letter of intent. He goes, I did. I said, yeah, look at page 3 right here. He goes, oh. I said, how do you think I'm going to negotiate that for you now? He goes, you're not.
It's going to be tough.
and, and so lawyers are a necessary evil. Not everybody likes us, but the key is if we're doing our job right, we've earned our keep.
Very good. Well, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Not virtually for everybody else, but not for you and me. Real quickly, if somebody wants to talk to you about some of the things we've discussed, or get your advice or get you a look at some things, what's a good way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, call the office or email me.
Okay, go ahead and give us those numbers and stuff, and then I'll put it in the show notes.
All right. So phone number for the office is 817-267-4529. My email address, and you're going to make me give this with my nice long last name, which is the letter P as in Paul, my last name, B as in boy, E, N as in Nancy, E, N as in Nancy, A-T-I, @benenatilaw.com.
And if we had known, so my last name is really hard to spell. If we'd known all this when we were setting up our emails, right? I mean, we would have done something easier. I don't know.
I tried to get BLF, it wasn't available,
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
But what's nice is everybody kind of knows Benenati, right? And so they'll say, for me, a lot of times it's gone down to Pete's firm because they can't say my last name.
Yeah,
it's Pete's firm.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So, like I said, we'll put that in the show notes for everybody out there. If you have a question pertaining to estate planning, buy-sell agreements, M&A, Pete's a great resource. I encourage you to reach out to him. And also, hopefully, this is a great resource for you as we come at you about every other week. You're welcome to subscribe. We put this on all the different platforms so that you're able to get this podcast however you want. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, you name it. We should be there. Really appreciate you tuning in today. Thank you, Pete, for being here today.
Thank you.
And everybody, have a great week.